I'm going to go ahead and call the Legislative Post-Audit Committee meeting to order. Can someone yell out the door and have Larry Ann come in for a second?
The blonde gal there.
Yeah. I want everybody to remember that this meeting is being live streamed, and remember to turn on and use your mics. And also remember our mics are very sensitive, so if you're whispering to the ranking minority member, to make sure your mic is off. And before we get started, also, I want to thank Larry Ann Brown and Brad Smoot for lunch today. Thank you very much, Larry Ann. Larry Ann, did you want to say anything to us?
No, I'm good. Just got to go guard my Chick-fil-A.
You got to guard your Chick-fil-A. All righty.
See you later.
All right. First item on the agenda is we're going to go into executive session for a security audit on USD 501 Topeka. And we're going to have a motion in just a second, and we need it to include Todd Reinert, our CIO, Gary Minke, Jim Edwards, Chris Clark, Katrine Osterhaus, Alex Gard, and Kinsey Wilson. Vice Chair, do you have a motion?
Sure do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I move that the open meeting of the Legislative Post-Audit Committee be recessed for a closed executive meeting pursuant to KSA 75-4319A to discuss matters relating to the security measures that protect the information systems of USD 501 Topeka with the appropriate individuals from the Legislative Division of Post-Audit and USD 501 pursuant to the justification listed in KSA 75-4319B 12C, because discussion of such matters in an open meeting would jeopardize such security measures. That the committee resume the open meeting in room 118 north of the State House at 12:24, and to record this motion if adopted as part of the committee's permanent records.
Do we have a second? I have a second by Senator Petty. All those in favor of the, or is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed say no. Motion carries. We're in executive session. So if you weren't listening to
Perfect. Good afternoon, committee. My name is Holly Alker, and I'm a performance auditor at Legislative Post Audit. Today, I'm going to be presenting our limited scope audit, reviewing KDHE's water supply systems and wastewater treatment operator certification programs. The Legislative Post Audit Committee requested this limited scope audit and authorized it at the April 24, 2024 meeting. Our audit objective was to answer the following question. What were the results of the water supply system and wastewater treatment certification exams in 2023? We ended up extending the scope to 3 years, calendar years 2022 through 2024, to provide a more comprehensive answer to that question. The answer to our main question can be found at the top of page 3 of the report. Between calendar years 2022 and 2024, only about half of individuals passed their water supply and wastewater treatment operator examinations. I'm going to begin with some background information. There are 2 separate types of water facilities in Kansas that have to be supervised by a certified operator. The first is water supply systems, and the second is wastewater treatment facilities. These facilities have completely distinct purposes, so the skill sets needed to operate there are different. Each of those types of facilities has a corresponding certification program, both of which are administered by KDHE. These certification programs are pretty robust. They have 5 different levels, ranging from the certification for small systems up through classes 1 through 4. As the levels increase, operators are qualified to supervise bigger and bigger facilities and also to do different tasks. While we're talking about the 2 programs in this audit report in pretty similar ways, it is important to keep in mind that those are wholly distinct certification programs. As for the actual certification programs, KDHE requires those who want to be certified operators of either a water supply system or a wastewater treatment facility to have a high school diploma or GED, to take a written examination, and also to have some on-the-job experience. Based on our audit objective, the certification exam component is the part that we focused on for this audit. The wastewater treatment exams and the water supply exams are different from each other, but KDHE administers those on the same dates and in the same locations. By regulation, KDHE only has to administer the exams 2 times per year, but for the 3 years we looked at, which were 2022 through 2024 again, we found that they administered between 7 and 9 times per year. It's entirely up to KDHE, the locations they choose to administer at, but we found for those 3 years we looked at that at least 1 time per region the test was offered per year. Some regions of the state received it 2 times. Moving on to the actual exam pass rates, we're about halfway down page 4 and into page 5. We reviewed raw score data, which is maintained by KDHE. When looking at the data, anything 70% or higher is considered a pass regardless of what the specific exam was. So we considered all of those pass, anything below was a fail, and other than that, we didn't do anything with those raw scores. Again, the combined pass rates, when we consider all the certification exams, is about 50%. As figure 1 shows, our most recent 2024 exam pass rates were 47% for water supply and 43% for wastewater treatment. Those were lower than 2022 and 2023 pass rates, but there were also more total examinees, so there were more total sum passes in 2024, with about 450 between all exams. Looking now at figure 2, we're on page 6 of the report. Within both the water supply and wastewater treatment programs, those taking the small systems exams had higher pass rates. There's no rule that someone has to take the small systems exam before sitting for a higher level exam, but the small systems are the most foundational to be a certified operator. They also have lower amounts of experience requirement than some of those higher ones. So those prevent operators from jumping to a level 4 before getting that on-the-job experience for a longer period of time. We saw that water supply small system exams had a pass rate of 71% over the 3 years we reviewed, and wastewater treatment exams had a pass rate of 85%. For the sake of comparison, Class 3 and Class 4 exams, so those higher level exams, had pass rates between 16 and 33%, so significantly lower. We talked to KDHE about what we found, and they gave us a bit of context. While KDHE isn't required by regulation or statute to provide training materials, they do have a number of study materials on their website, as well as a calendar of trainings that they put on throughout the state. For wastewater small systems and Class 1 exams, there's even a pretest. So if examinees would like to practice before they sit for the real exam, they can for those specific tests. KDHE staff told us that even though a number of materials and trainings were available, examinees generally didn't have to attend any certain training or prepare in any certain way. So it's really kind of on the individual to get prepared. KDHE sees all of the exams as they currently are as relevant to the job duties that ultimately operators will be tasked with. So those pass rates are indicative of the examinees that are ready to step into that role. KDHE has periodically updated the exams, mostly to remove confusing or incorrect language. Most recently, modifications were made in 2021 to the water supply systems exams. Also in that 2020 to 2021 timeframe, the small systems and the Class 1 wastewater treatment exams were updated by a work group. Currently, in real time, those higher level wastewater treatment exams are being reviewed by a work group. KDHE has also in the planning stages of a partnership with community colleges and vocational schools to be able to operate or to be able to administer those tests online, but they would not be able to do that with the current $25 statutory cap on exam fees. We do not have any recommendations for this audit. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
Senator Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Holly. Do we have enough qualified operators in the state right now, or is this a big concern?
So with our limited scope and our limited time frame, we didn't really do an analysis on what the operator outlook is right now, but there are some members of KDHE staff that are here today that probably have their finger to that pulse.
Thank you, Holly.
Other questions? I might have one. So the difference between the small systems and then the 1, 2, 3, and 4, why are the higher levels required? What kind of additional responsibilities do the higher certifications carry?
So KDHE, I'm sure will have a very detailed response, but largely it's based off of even population. So if you're in a big city, you may need a Class 4 operator to be able to operate that facility, whereas some of these smaller facilities that either have small populations or they're only doing certain types of disinfections, like they don't need that higher one. So a small system is fine.
So then do the low pass rates then primarily affect our larger communities in the state?
The low pass rates will affect operators who are trying to operate at those specific facilities.
All right, any other questions? Representative Petty, sorry. Did you tell me that once already? Senator Petty.
I'm sorry. The $25 cap on the testing fee, there was legislation that did not, well, at least it did not pass for that part of it. But that is a factor of them working with their community colleges and being able to offer those, the testing there. Would that be correct?
Yes, we talked to KDHE, and while they can kind of in-house workshop some of those questions, as far as doing any major changes, like administering it online, they said that those fees wouldn't be sufficient to do that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Somebody from the department here to answer any questions? If you'd come to the mic and introduce yourself.
Oh, there it is, better. Happy to stand for questions from the committee.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So how many water operators do we have in the state?
1,200 water, 1,200 wastewater.
So would you think that this audit would be consistently reliable to the number of operators that are actually working out in the field that have not yet passed either 1 or 2?
The audit, which the agency supports the findings of, point out that we've got flaws in the testing system that is in part of the problem of trying to build and retain a adequate workforce handling our utilities operations there.
But what percent of your operators have not passed a test? It looks like they can take it 3 times a year.
In rough numbers, under 50% probably do not pass at any given time.
And then final question, if I may, if it's for safety purposes and only half maybe have passed or even reached the 70% mark bar, then what kind of risk are we placed in? And is there any type of, are you requiring those cities or municipalities to have extra, is there anything that you're requiring to ensure the safety because the testing is not, it would have been the first.
All the utilities have to have a certified operator in place there. And sometimes they jointly share and have almost a circuit rider that works among it, but they all have to have operators in charge that basically are the go-to when issues arise. Jeopardy, it's certainly jeopardy, but probably more so in the near term, it's a burdensome workload on the other 50% that have passed there and have provided essentially coverage there. We need to build that out to create more resiliency as operators come and go, as well as be on response for contingencies as they arise within our utility systems.
Senator Peterson.
There's 4 working community colleges for testing. How's that coming?
On the we're doing that mostly on the wastewater end. It's a work in progress, but we've always had good success with community colleges such as down at Fort Scott to develop training materials and assistance for operators to become proficient at the craft. And there are 2 aspects of this. One is that we're having mediocre passage rates, but more important from our perspective is we have to have a knowledgeable workforce that can understand what they're doing with the programs or with their operations, because that is ultimately what conveys public safety is. We don't want book learned operators up there that don't know what they're doing with that. So it's not just training to take the test, it's that once they're certified, maintaining training to maintain their technical acumen for the evolving changes that are expected of our water and wastewater systems.
Mr. Chair. What does it cost for a module of training?
Training-wise, I don't know if we have.
Right now, we're just in a pilot process.
Yes.
And it looks like we would have to contract with the community college for them to administrate the tests. So we haven't gotten that far.
Aside from that, we utilize services through the Kansas Municipal Utilities and the Kansas Rural Water Association to conduct training for us that we support through EPA grant monies to go out and provide not only technical assistance to troubleshoot problems, but also provide training for the operator workforce.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Any other questions, committee? Representative Senator Thompson.
That's okay. There's a lot of mix of us in here today. Thank you, sir. Is there a consistency in the training among the various sources that do the training? Do you see inconsistencies there that may be troubling, that may be affecting the test scores?
No, I think that the training is consistent, and I think it's partly a matter of the tests themselves haven't kept up with the times, and in themselves have been not worded correctly, that they trip up some of the operators. Again, looking at the perspective of trying to get better passage rates there, we're working on troubleshooting on both sides, the tests for our water and our wastewater operators. We've made a lot of progress in improving the wastewater tests, pulling together a work group to handle that. So it's not just the training itself. The training will follow as a function of what the tests are expecting it, but it's the underlying level of knowledge that's being expected. The tests haven't kept up with the times, haven't done a good, adequate job of conveying what is expected of it. As we get those tests improved, the training will react in kind and prepare candidates for taking the test appropriately. And we hope that we will continue to present the tests as a more fair representation of what's expected in terms of their knowledge base.
So you do have some input into what's on the test then?
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
In fact, again, we have a dichotomy there. With wastewater, we have complete control over what was going on. Water, we have EPA oversight as a function of the Safe Drinking Water Act that oversees kind of the expectation that these tests have been validated and represent what EPA expects to be presented as the adequate quizzing of our candidates as to determining whether they're appropriate to take on the role of a certified operator.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Petty.
Thank you for being here. And since the issue of pass rate seems to be with the class 2 and 3 and 4 examinations, and you have a higher need in the higher populations area, have any of those entities taken on, or are you talking to them taking on doing some in-house training or preparation for the test?
I think the larger utilities make it a point of providing ongoing continuing education of their operators. And again, that's the existing work base that's there. The poorest test passage results are the more sophisticated systems that are serving the larger communities. But those are also the utilities that have multiple operators and have multiple shifts of there. And again, it's trying to build that out so that the overall workload across that they don't overtax their available workforce, and to build it up so that they have adequate coverage for across the shifts there. So the utilities themselves are trying to do everything they can to attract and then retain qualified personnel to run their systems. And they have found it to be somewhat of a challenge as well, is that it's hard to keep people. People are moving between systems and across the states there. So it's and the senator had asked the question if there's enough. No, there's not enough certified operators, and it's a nationwide problem. It is just one that across the country, my counterparts are all struggling along with the applicable utilities to try to retain and hold on to a trained workforce. Again, especially on the upper classes where the sophistication of the treatment systems require someone who's pretty much dedicated that is their job, period.
This sounds a little familiar to me. Was there a budget enhancement in KDHE's budget on this problem this year that you're aware of?
No, I don't believe so. Because
right.
we have our staff in place to help provide both wastewater and water assistance for certified operators. We're fully staffed from that side. We're not looking to build up our staff. We're trying to make the vehicles that assist operators with passage and then getting them into the workforce. And we rely on not only ourselves, but also with the local utilities to help frame that there. There's no fiscal impact per se relative to us adding on personnel.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, the next item on the agenda is KDHE IT monitoring, and Katrin is going to present to us.
Thank you, Madam, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. So my name is Katrin Osterhaus. I am the IT audit manager at Post Audit. I do realize we have a few new members, so I wanted to take a minute just to explain our work here. You should have a 5-page memo in your binder. Looks something like that. And as you know, our office produces performance audits on behalf of your committee. And so far, you've heard 2 of those audits, one of them being the confidential IT audit and the second one being the water certification, so typical audits. I say that because this thing that I'm going to talk a little bit about is different. It's a little bit of a different beast. The IT monitoring report is something where we essentially do an ongoing monitoring of a particular IT project that the committee has approved for us. And so this is an ongoing activity, so it's not necessarily an audit per se. We don't do that under audit standards. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that small difference there. So our statute does direct us to conduct these continuing audits to identify as early as possible when a project is at risk of failure due to scope, schedule, cost, or quality problems. This was in response to, back in the 90s, there were a number of failed IT projects, and so we, post-audit, would be doing these post-mortem audits, and so there was a change made in the statute that basically said we could follow these projects, and we can only do one at a time because of, staffing. So we have, at the current time, we are following the KDHE audit. So we have been monitoring other projects in the past, but right now we are monitoring the Early Childhood Data Integration and System Enhancement Project. So that's a mouthful. That project will replace the current Claris project system, which is very outdated, as KDHE will tell you. So for this project, there's really 2 agencies that are collaborating on this, KDHE, for the child care licensing portion of it, as well as the Department of Children and Families for the foster care facility licensing. So this does include some associated processes for facility inspections, background checks, renewals, complaints, those types of things. And so in January of 2024, so just last year, KDHE signed a $4.3 million contract with a vendor to create a licensing solution using software as a service. So our monitoring results starts on page 2 if you follow along in the memo. So as of December of 31st of last year, project scope, cost, schedule, and security was actually satisfactory, and I'll cover each of those areas in a little bit more detail next. So the scope has been agreed to by both parties, and as well the 2 state agencies as well as the contractor. And by the end of last year, the parties actually did make some changes. They had agreed to 10 change requests following a very structured change control process, so that's really good. The parties also considered, but ultimately rejected, additional changes during the reporting period. Those requested changes may actually become necessary as the project continues to develop and evolve. Again, as of December 31st, the cost also was satisfactory, although the estimated cost has increased, and it is close to the $5 million that the state has encumbered for this project. So we're on page 3 now. So far, KDHE has paid about $972,000 for the fixed price contract based on several deliverables that were either completed or partially completed. During the discussions, the parties also agreed to better associate remaining deliverables with the detailed project plan. There were some communication issues, and there was some unclarity about that, and so they both of the parties had discussed and agreed on creating a better way of monitoring that. KDHE also has approved 5 change requests. I mentioned earlier there were 10. 5 of them were actually no cost, so that's good. The other 5 did bring in a cost to up the cost by about $125,000. And additionally, there is a new monitoring cost for the Kansas Information Technology Office. That will add another $40,000, and that's because of the delays that the project will be incurring, and I'll be discussing here in a minute. Lastly, KDHE did execute a separate contract for additional licensing fees, or annual licensing fees, I should say, and that added another $385,000 to kind of the base price, so to speak. Now moving to the next area, and that is the schedule. As of December 31st, the project is in satisfactory status for that area after the project was rebaselined by about 4 months. And that's that all fell into our monitoring period, and so I'll talk a little bit more about that. The original completion date was October 2025, and that was pushed back back to the end of February 26. The parties also have started using a little bit more reporting. There's something called a correlation report that helps better understand as to what particular tasks are falling behind, and a little bit more clarity between the parties as to who's needing to pick up the pace, so to speak. So that's the end of schedule. The last item I want to cover is security. The project was satisfactory in planning for security. In this area, I would point out that there are really no specific tasks or checks identified in the project schedule or deliverables. With such a highly complex system that interfaces with really a number of different other state systems, we think the state should have some insight or oversight, and right now there's just very little in terms of the project plan on that. And with that, I stand for questions.
Do we have any questions for Katrin? Seeing none, thank you. Very good job. All right, committee, next on the agenda is consent calendar items. Kristen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. If you want to turn to tab A in your committee notebooks, that's where I am. And you'll see the consent calendar memo there. So on today's consent calendar, we've got just a couple of items, the first of which is approval of the minutes from your last meeting. That was January 22nd, and you can see those in attachment A. And then we also need you to approve the performance audits and the IT security audit that was presented today. So that would include the systems and wastewater operator certification program and the IT security audit of school district, Unified School District 501.
All right, committee, as you know, on the consent agenda, it's considered approved unless somebody has an objection to it. Does anybody have an objection to any of the items on the consent agenda? Okay. Would anybody like to be listed as abstaining because they weren't at the last meeting? All right, seeing none, thank you. It's accepted. Next on the agenda, Chris is going to discuss the next committee meeting on tab B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In tab B, there's kind of a roughed out schedule of upcoming meetings and what would be ready for each meeting. The chair and I met and we talked about roughly meeting every other week. So if that works for everyone, the next meeting would be, so we had today, February 3rd, so then the next would be February 17th, which would be the soft warfare limited scope and security awareness training for the committee itself. And then March 3rd and March 17th, those are the audits that would be available. There's a little flexibility there as to which one is at which meeting, but that's what's coming up. Were there any concerns? Or again, we moved to Mondays at noon in this room. So any questions?
Yeah, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The veterans have been waiting patiently for the claims assistant audit. Is there any way that could be presented earlier than March?
We are just in the process of drafting a report on that. So there's a ways to go as the audited entities need a review period and that sort of thing. I believe March 3rd is probably about the earliest.
Go ahead, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The veterans were under the impression that that was finished. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions? And Senator Tyson, can you make this schedule work? I know that you're the one most impacted by these meetings, so we want to be.
Thank you for asking, Mr. Chairman. We rescheduled. There will be no conflict. So thank you.
Right. Anything else on the agenda? Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the committee? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.